I stood there holding a paper cup of bad coffee, and I didn't know yet that everyone in that room except me already knew what was coming. The fluorescent lights in the middle school gymnasium hummed like something was about to break. The parent-teacher conference had already run 40 minutes over. Margaret had her notebook out like she was taking clinical notes. My sister, the child psychologist. Her pen made a little scratch every time she wrote something down. Tom stood next to me with his arms crossed, checking his watch every 3 minutes. The teacher, Mrs. Albright, was going over Liam's reading comprehension scores. She used words like below grade level and concerning trajectory. I kept my hand on Tom's elbow, but he didn't squeeze back. Margaret cut her off mid-sentence. She said, let's be realistic. He's never going to make it to college. I heard it land. I heard the silence. Then I heard Claire, Tom's colleague, from behind me. She said, Tom, didn't you have that thing at for the lunch with the partners? You said it was important. Tom didn't look at me. He said yes, he did have that thing. He had to leave. I said, it's 3:50. You have 10 minutes. He kissed my cheek. I'll take the car. You can get a ride with Claire. He was gone before I could answer. I watched the back of his navy suit disappear through the double doors. The gymnasium smelled like sweat and floor wax. I looked at Margaret. She was writing something down again. Claire touched my shoulder and said, he's been so stressed lately. You know how partners are. I did not know how partners were. I was not a partner. I was a wife. I drove home alone because Claire had a thing too. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car for a long moment. The house was quiet. Liam was at his friend's house. Tom was at his lunch. I walked through the front door, and I noticed his briefcase was still sitting on the kitchen counter. He never forgot his briefcase. Never. I set my purse down. I stood there in the kitchen, and I listened to the refrigerator hum, and I told myself I was imagining things. I did not touch the briefcase. I made tea. I sat at the table and I let the tea go cold, and I thought about Margaret's voice. She had said it so casually. So clinically. Like she was diagnosing a stranger. My son. Her nephew. She had never held him as a baby. She had never sat up with him when he had a fever. She had never read him the same picture book 14 times in one night because he kept saying, again, Mom, again. She had the audacity to say never. I got up and I opened the briefcase. I didn't know what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for anything. But I saw the receipt. It was tucked into the side pocket. A bank receipt for a safe deposit box. Our bank. Our branch. The date was 3 weeks ago. I had not been there with him. I had not signed anything. I had not known. I read at it. I read the branch address. I read the box number. Then I folded it and put it back exactly where I found it. I closed the briefcase and I pressed my palms flat against the counter and I breathed in through my nose. I don't know how long I stood there. The clock on the microwave said 5:30. Liam would be home at 6. I had to make dinner. I had to be normal. I opened the refrigerator and I took out the chicken and I root slicing it on the cutting boa road. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Tom walked in at 6:15. Liam was already at the table doing his homework. Tom kissed the top of my head and said sorry he was late. He said the lunch ran long. He said the partners were impossible. He said, did you bring my briefcase in from the car? I said it was on the counter. He picked it up. He didn't open it. He took it to his study and closed the door. I served dinner. We ate. Tom asked Liam about his homework. Liam said it was fine. Tom said good, keep it up. He asked me about the conference. I said Margaret had been Margaret. He said, she means well. She means well. I looked at him. He was cutting his chicken into neat, uniform pieces. He always did that. He had a precise way of moving through the world. Everything in its place. Everything accounted for. I said, she told Liam he'd never go to college. Tom stopped cutting. Just for a second. Then he resumed. He said, she's a child psychologist. She was being realistic. I said, he's 9. Tom said, I know. I said, he's 9 years old, and she wrote him off in front of his teacher. Tom put his fork down. He looked at me like I was the one being difficult. He said, Elena, you're overreacting. It was one comment. I looked at Liam. He was staring at his plate. He had stopped eating. I felt something in my chest crack open. Not loud. Just a small split. Like a hairline fracture in a teacup. You can't see it at first. But it's there. It stays there. And eventually, you pour hot water in, and the whole thing falls apart. I said, I need to clean up. I took the plates to the sink. I scraped the chicken into the trash. I stood with my back to the table and I listened to Tom ask Liam about some boy at school. I listened to Liam answer in a small voice. I listened to my husband act like everything was fine. I hadn't told him about the briefcase. I didn't know why. Later that night I sat on the edge of the bed and I watched him change into his pajamas. He asked me if I was okay. I said I was tired. He said I should rest more. He said I was running myself ragged. He said I was doing too much. I said, what would you like me to stop doing? He looked at me. He smiled. He said, nothing. You're perfect. I just want you to be happy. He kissed my forehead and got into bed. He fell asleep in 3 minutes. I stayed sitting up. I watched his chest rise and fall. I watched the streetlights make shadows on the ceiling. I thought about the receipt. I thought about Claire's hand on my shoulder. I thought about Margaret's pen scratching across her notebook. I thought about how my husband had left me at a conference where my sister told everyone my son was a lost cause. He had not said a word. He had not said, she's wrong. He had not said, don't talk to my son that way. He had just checked his watch and waited for Claire to give him an exit. I got up and I went to the bathroom. I closed the door. I sat on the edge of the bathtub. I did not cry. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was 44 years old. I had a master's degree in marketing. I had run a department of 12 people before I had Liam. I had given it up because Tom said we could afford it. He said he wanted me home. He said it would be better for Liam. He said, you can always go back. I had not gone back. I had volunteered at school. I had organized the book fair. I had made dentist appointments. I had cooked dinners. I had folded laundry. I had done all of it, and I had done it without complaint because I thought I was building something. A family. A life. A marriage. I looked at myself and I did not recognize the woman looking back. I went back to bed. I did not sleep. The next day I took Liam to school. I watched him walk through the doors. He turned back and waved. I waved back. I sat in the car in the drop-off line and I thought about what Margaret had said. I thought about the word never. I thought about how she had used it like a weapon. I thought about how Tom had let her. I drove to the bank. The teller knew me. She said, good morning, Mrs. Whitmore. How are you today? I said fine. I said I needed to check something. I showed her my ID. I said I needed to verify a safe deposit box under my husband's name. She typed something into her terminal. She said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore, but that box is registered solely to Mr. Whitmore. I can't give you access without his signature. I said I understood. I said I must have been mistaken. I left the bank. I sat in the parking lot and I gripped the steering wheel. Solely to Mr. Whitmore. Not jointly. Not with me. He had opened a box in his name only. He had done it 3 weeks ago. He had not told me. I drove home. I put the mail on the counter. I opened the bills. I paid them. I wrote the checks. I balanced the checkbook. I looked at the account balances. I looked at the savings account. I looked at the retirement fund. I looked at everything I thought was ours. I had no idea what was in that box. I sta route to notice things after that. Small things. He came home later. He made more excuses. He took calls in the study with the door closed. He sta route going to the gym at 6 in the morning even though he had never been a morning person. He bought new shirts. He bought new cologne. He smiled more. I smiled back. I made his coffee. I ironed his shirts. I kissed him goodbye. I did not ask questions. Margaret called 3 days later. She said, I wanted to apologize about the conference. I was RSH. I'm sorry. I said, what you said was cruel. She said, I'm a professional. I see these things. I was trying to prepare you. I said, you were trying to hurt me. She didn't deny it. She said, maybe I was. But that doesn't mean I was wrong. I hung up the phone. I did not call her back. She didn't call me either. A week passed. 2 weeks. I kept going through the motions. I went to the grocery store. I went to the dry cleaner. I picked Liam up from school. I helped him with his homework. I made dinner. I went to bed. I woke up. I did it again. Tom was happy. He was so happy. He whistled in the shower. He hummed in the kitchen. He said, "I love you, Elena," every night before he fell asleep. The words came so easily. They meant nothing. I knew that now. I knew it in my bones. I didn't have proof. I had a feeling. I had a receipt. I had Claire's hand on my shoulder. I had Tom's relief when he walked out of that gymnasium. I had all of it and I had none of it. One night I sat at the kitchen table after everyone was asleep. I opened my laptop. I opened a blank document. I typed, "Safe deposit box, date, amount unknown." I read at the words. I closed the laptop. I put it away. I went to bed. He was lying on his side. His back was to me. I lay down next to him, and I looked at the back of his head. I thought about the safe deposit box. I thought about Claire. I thought about Margaret. I thought about never. And I put the receipt back exactly where I found it, and I did not tell Tom I had seen it. He never asked what I did during the day. That was the part that made me feel colder than anything else. I spent the next 6 months watching him. Not like a detective, not really. More like a student who finally understood the subject was going to be on the final exam. I paid attention to the shape of his lies. The way he said work with a little shrug and a smile. The way he turned his phone face down on the table at dinner. The way he stopped asking about Liam's schoolwork and route asking about Liam's social life, like he was checking on whether I was leaving the house. I got a Libra Recier road. route reading about forensic accounting. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I needed to understand money better. I had always let Tom handle the big stuff. The investments. The retirement. The taxes. I paid the bills and balanced the checkbook, and I thought that was enough. That was what wives did. That was what good wives did. I went to the Libra read twice a week. I checked out books on estate planning and divorce law and financial fraud. I kept them in a canvas tote bag with my groceries on top. I sat at the kitchen table after Liam went to bed, and I read chapters about asset concealment and equitable distribution. I underlined passages with a pencil. I wrote notes in the margins. Tom walked through the kitchen one night and said, "What are you reading?" I held up the cover. It was a novel I'd checked out from the fiction section. I had it on top of the stack. I said, "Some mystery." He laughed. He said, "You and your books." He poured himself a glass of wine. He sat across from me. He said, "I've been thinking." I said, "About what?" He said, "About us. About the future. We should take a trip. Just the two of us. Somewhere maybe next spring." I said, "That sounds nice." He said, "You deserve it. You do so much. You take care of everything." I smiled at him. I said, "That's what I'm here for." He nodded. He finished his wine. He kissed me and went to bed. I sat there with my mystery novel covering the financial fraud book underneath it. I did not feel guilty. I felt clear. That surprised me. Spring came. The trip never happened. Tom had more work. He was swamped. The partners were impossible. He would make it up to me. He promised. Route going to the public Libra downtown instead of the branch near our house. I needed a computer with no history. I needed to print things without anyone seeing. Route looking up Tom's firm. I looked up his clients. I looked up the partners. I read their names. I read their wives' names. I read their children's names. I read their houses. I memorized a lot of things in those months. I stored them away. Not with malice. With caution. Like putting coins in a jar. I didn't know what I was saving for. I just knew I might need it. Margaret called on my birthday. She left a voicemail. She said, "I know you're still mad, but you're my sister. Happy birthday. I love you." I deleted the message. I did not call back. Tom took me to dinner. A nice place downtown. candlelight and white tablecloths. He ordered a bottle of wine I'd never heard of. He held my hand across the table. He said, "You look beautiful tonight." I said, "Thank you." He said, "I'm lucky to have you." I said, "I'm lucky too." I was lying and he was lying, and I wondered how we had gotten so good at it. I drank the wine. I let him hold my hand. I let him drive us home. I let him make love to me. I lay in the dark after UARD, and I thought about how his hands felt the same as they always had. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. I waited until he was asleep. I got up. I went to his study. I opened the bottom drawer of his desk where he kept the tax files. I had a key. He had given it to me years ago. He'd forgotten he gave it to me. I opened the drawer. I took out the folder Mark had investment statements. I took photos of every page with my phone. I put everything back. I locked the drawer. I went back to bed. I did not sleep. I took the photos to the library the next day. I spread them out on a table in the quiet section. I looked at the numbers. I added them in my head. I wrote them down in a notebook. I looked up the brokerage firm. I looked up the account numbers. I did not know what I was seeing. Some of it I understood. Some of it I didn't. But I knew what a lot of zeros looked like. I knew what a number with a comma and 3 zeros meant. We had more money than I thought. Much more. I kept going. I found other folders. Other statements. Other accounts. Some in Tom's name. Some in joint names. Some I didn't recognize. I photographed everything. I logged every document. I built a private folder on the library computer, and I encrypted it with a password Tom would never guess. Liam's birthday. He always forgot Liam's birthday. I went home and I made dinner. I helped with homework. I kissed Tom goodnight. I did it all, and I didn't miss a single beat. The summer before Liam sta route middle school, I got a call from an old colleague. Rachel. We had worked together at the marketing firm. She had her own consulting business now. She said, "I heard you stayed home. I'm looking for someone to do research and analysis. PART time. Remote. It's not glamorous. But you'd be good at it." I said, "I can't. I have Liam." She said, "PART time. Remote. I'm serious. I need someone I can trust." I said, "Let me think about it." I thought about it for 3 days. I did not tell Tom. I called Rachel back. I said, "Yes, but I need to keep it quiet." She said, "Why?" I said, "I'm not ready to explain it." She said, "I don't need an explanation. I sta rude working at night. After dinner. After homework. After Tom was in the study or in the bedroom. I closed the door to my office, the sparring room, really, and I did the work. Spreadsheets and data sets. Consumer behavior. Market trends. It came back quickly. Like riding a bike. Like I had never stopped. I got paid. I opened a checking account in my name, only at a different bank. The teller said, "Will your husband need access?" I said no. "He will not." I told myself it was insurance. Just in case. I told myself I was being practical. I told myself if I was wrong, I could close the account and laugh about it later. I knew I wasn't wrong. I just couldn't say it out loud yet. Liam was struggling. His reading scores were still low. He had testing accommodations. He had a tutor. He worked hard. He stayed up late. He cried once in the kitchen when he thought I was asleep. I heard him. I didn't go to him. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to say, "Your aunt is a monster." I wanted to say, "Your father didn't defend you." I wanted to say, "I'm sorry I didn't fight harder." I said nothing. I stayed in my room and I listened to him cry, and I hated myself for it. The next morning, I made him pancakes. I said, "We're going to the library after school. Every day. You and me. We're going to figure this out." He looked at me. He said, "You don't have to." I said, "I want to. Read with me." He nodded. We went to the library after school. We sat in the children's section. We read together. He stumbled over words. I waited. I did not correct him. I let him get there on his own. When he got it right, I said, "See, you did it." He smiled. He didn't smile much that year. But he smiled then. Tom came home late. He worked late. He had a big case. He had a lot of big cases. He was a very important man. He had no time for the library. He had no time for reading. He had no time for us. I didn't miss him. That was the party I didn't expect. I thought I would miss him. I thought the absence would feel like a hole. It didn't. It felt like a door opening. Just a crack. But it was open. One night in October, I found a receipt in the laundry room. It was in the pocket of his jacket. A receipt for a restaurant I didn't recognize. A bottle of wine. 2 entrees. A date. The date was a Tuesday. He had told me he was working late. I looked at the receipt. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Not Tom's. Claire's. She had signed with a little HERT next to her name. A tiny CA refill HERT. Like she was 12 years old. I folded the receipt. I put it in my pocket. I finished the laundry. I folded his shirts. I hung his jackets. I put everything away. I did not say a word. I was not surprised. I was not shocked. I was not even angry. I just felt a kind of final settling. A shift. Like a bone that had been broken and was finally set in the right place. It hurt. But it was better. I sta root making a plan. Not a revenge plan. A survival plan. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I needed to know what he had. What I had. What I would have if everything fell apart. I hired a forensic accountant. I found her online. Her name was Susan. I called her from the library phone. I said, I need someone to look at financial documents. Discreetly. I don't know what I'm looking for. She said, you pay me by the hour. I don't ask questions. We met at a coffee shop. I brought the photos. I brought the printouts. I brought everything I had copied. I spread it out across the table. Susan looked at it. She sipped her coffee. She said, your husband is hiding assets. Not well, but hiding them. I said, how much? She said, I need more time. But it's significant. He's got accounts you don't know about. He's got investments in a name that doesn't match your joint filings. He's been moving money. I said, for how long? She said, I need more time. But I'd say ARS. At least 3. Maybe more. I paid her. I left the coffee shop. I walked back to the car. I sat in the driver's seat and I sta read at the steering wheel. RS. He had been hiding money for RS. While I made dinner. While I bought groceries. While I took Liam to the doctor. While I paid the bills with our money that was apparently not our money at all. I drove home. I walked through the door. Tom was home. He was in the kitchen. He said, where were you? I called. I said, library. With Liam. He said, oh, right. The library. He didn't ask any more questions. He didn't see a re. That was the gift he gave me. He didn't see a re. It made everything easier. Liam came home from school. He showed me a test. He had gotten a B in math. He was beaming. I said, look at you. Look at what you did. He said, it's not an A. I said, it's a B. You worked for that B. You reneged that B. I'm proud of you. He hugged me. He didn't hug me much anymore. He was 11. He was getting too old for hugs. But he hugged me then. I held him. I thought about Margaret. I thought about what she had said in that gymnasium. Never. She had said never. I looked at my son and I thought, you have no idea what he can do. Neither of them do. Ista root waking up rire. 6. Then 5:30. Then 5. I did my work for Rachel before the house woke up. I answered emails. I compiled reports. I sent them. I got paid. I transferred the money into my account. I saved it. I watched it grow. It wasn't much. But it was mine. Tom asked me once what I was doing up so early. I said I was reading. He said, you're always reading. I said, there's a lot I need to learn. He kissed my forehead. He said, you're cute when you're studious. I smiled. I let him think I was cute. I let him think I was simple. I let him think he had me figured out. I had him figured out too. I had him figured out better than he knew. I kept going to the library. I kept meeting Susan. I kept building my file. I had a folder now. A real folder. Physical. with tabs. I kept it in a box at the back of my closet. Behind the photo albums. Behind the Christmas decorations. Behind everything Tom never touched. Inside the folder, safe deposit box receipt. Restaurant receipt with the HRT copies of investment statements. Photographs of tax returns. Notes from Susan. A list of accounts. A list of names. A timeline. A plan. I didn't know what the plan was yet. But I had one. I was building it. One piece at a time. One photograph. One meeting. One whispered phone call. One library trip. One layer of armor. I stood in my kitchen one night. It was winter. Snow was falling outside. Tom was in the study. Liam was doing his homework. I was making tea. I looked out the window at the snow and I thought about the conference. I thought about Margaret's pen scratching across her notebook. I thought about Claire's hand on my shoulder. I thought about Tom walking out the door. I thought about all the things I hadn't known then that I knew now. I poured the tea. I carried it to the table. I sat down. I opened my laptop. I opened the blank document. I typed a new line. Safe deposit box has been active for at least 3 hours. Tom and Claire. Restaurant receipt dated October 12th. Marga read. Complicit. ISTA read at the words. I closed the laptop. I looked at the snow. I felt the cold through the window glass. I thought about what Susan had said. He's been moving money. I thought about Tom's smile. I thought about the way he said he loved me. I thought about Claire's HRT on that receipt. I thought about Margaret's silence when I stopped calling. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I just sat there. I knew what was coming. I didn't know when. I didn't know how. But I knew. I put the receipt back exactly where I found it, and I did not tell Tom I had seen it. But now I had a folder. I had a plan. I had a bank account. I had a son who was going to be fine. And I had a sister who had been wrong about everything. I sat in my own living room, and I watched him watch television, and I knew exactly what he had planned for me. The file grew thicker over the next 2 hours. Susan was good. She found accounts I hadn't known existed. She found transfers I couldn't trace. She found a pattern of money moving out of our joint accounts and into accounts held by a trust that had Tom's mother's maiden name attached to it. His mother had been dead for 6 years. The trust was new. I paid Susan in cash. I took money from my account and I handed her envelopes. She handed me reports. We met at the same coffee shop. She always ordered the same thing. Black coffee. No sugar. She drank it fast, and she talked fast, and she never wrote anything down in front of me. She said, he's preparing to leave you. He's moving assets into a structure that will be difficult to touch in a divorce. He's doing it systematically. He's been doing it for a while. I said, how much? She looked at me. She said, enough that you'll be fine. But only if you act before he finishes. I said, he's still my husband. She said, he's a man who's been hiding money from you for 5 years. That's not a husband. That's a business partner who forgot to tell you the business was closing. I nodded. I paid her. I left. Liam was in 8th grade now. His reading scores had improved. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But steadily. He had a tutor twice a week. He had an IEP. He had a teacher who believed in him. He had me. He didn't have his father. Tom still came home late. Tom still worked weekends. Tom still had important cases. Tom still had Claire. I hadn't confronted him. I didn't confront him. I didn't confront Claire. I didn't confront Margaret. I let them all think I was exactly who they thought I was. A wife. A mother. A sister. A woman who didn't notice things. A woman who didn't ask questions. I asked questions. I just didn't ask them out loud. Margaret sent a card for Liam's birthday. It had a check inside. $50 RS. She wrote, hope you're doing well in school. And Margaret. I tore up the check. I did not tell Liam. I did not tell Tom. I put the card in the trash and I went back to making dinner. Tom asked me once if I'd heard from Margaret. I said no. He said, that's too bad. She's your sister. I said, I know. I did not elaborate. He didn't press. He didn't press because he didn't see a re. He read about his schedule. He read about his clients. He read about his safe deposit box and his secret trust and his girlfriend with the tiny handwriting and the little RT at the bottom of receipts. He read about all the things he thought I didn't know. I knew them all. I root taking classes at the community college. Online. 2 courses a semester. Financial planning and forensic accounting. I told Tom I was taking a book club. He laughed. He said, "You and your book clubs." He didn't ask which book. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't read. I aced the classes. I got A's. I learned how to read a balance sheet. I learned how to trace funds. I learned how to identify fraudulent transfers. I learned how to protect myself. I learned how to build a case. I didn't know if I would ever need to use it. But I had it. I had it and I was ready. One night I found a document on the printer. Tom had left it there by mistake. It was a draft of something. A letter. Addressed to a law firm. I read the first paragraph. It was a request for a consultation regarding divorce proceedings. The date was current. The name on the letter was Tom's. The firm was not our family attorney. It was a firm I had never heard of. A firm downtown. A firm that specialized in high net worth divorces. I read the letter twice. I folded it. I put it back on the printer. I went to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. I drank it. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not feel anything except a strange, hollow calm. He was planning to leave. He was planning to leave me, and he was planning to do it with lawyers I didn't know and accounts I couldn't touch, and a trust that was already in place. He was planning to leave me with nothing. He was planning to leave me with less than nothing. I thought about our wedding. I thought about the vows. I thought about the IRS. I thought about the son we had raised. I thought about the dinners I had had and the laundry I had folded and the birthday parties I had organized and the school conferences I had attended alone. I thought about all of it and I felt something close to relief. At least now I knew. I called Susan the next morning. I said, "I found something. He's consulting with a divorce firm." She said, "He's moving faster." I said, "What do I do?" She said, "You move faster. You don't confront him. You don't warn him. You find the best attorney you can afford and you get everything in order. Then you serve him before he serves you." I said, "That feels like a betrayal." She said, "He's been betraying you for years. This is self-defense." I found the attorney. Her name was Diana. She was a partner at a firm that handled high-conflict divorces. She was expensive. I didn't I paid her with money from my account. I told her everything. Every account. Every transfer. Every receipt. Every photograph. Every meeting with Susan. She looked at the file. She said, "You have more than enough here. You have a case." I said, "I don't want to hurt him. I just want to be safe." She said, "He's been planning to leave you with nothing. That is not a man who deserves safety." I nodded. I signed the papers. I paid the retainer. I left her office. I walked out into the street and I looked up at the sky. It was a clear day. Blue sky. Sunlight. I felt like I was standing on a cliff. I felt like I was about to step off. I didn't know if I would fly or fall, but I knew I was going to find out. I went home. Tom was at the office. Liam was at school. I walked through the house and I looked at everything. The furniture. The curtains. The art on the walls. The photo frames on the mantel. All of it was mine. All of it was ours. All of it was about to be something else. I sat on the couch. I looked at the television. I thought about all the nights I had sat there with Tom. All the nights we had watched something and he had held my hand and I had thought we were okay. We had been broken for a long time. I just hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had seen it and I hadn't wanted to look. I route packing. Not for a move. Just for myself. I packed a box of Liam's baby things. His first onesie. His first shoes. His first book. I packed a box of my own things. My grandmother's ring. My college diploma. The letter Tom had written me when we were dating. I read the letter. It said things like, "I can't imagine my life without you." I folded it. I put it in the box. I taped the box shut. I wrote my name on it in permanent marker. I put the box in the back of my closet, next to the file. I was getting ready. I didn't know for what, but I was getting ready. A week later, Tom said he was going on a business trip. Chicago. 3 days. I said, have a good time. He kissed me goodbye. He said, I'll bring you something. I said, don't bother. He laughed. He said, I'll bring you something anyway. You're always saying I never surprise you. He left. I waited until his car was out of the driveway. I went to his study. I opened his desk. I found the safe deposit box key. I had looked for it before. I had never found it. I had searched every drawer, every pocket, every jacket. It had never been there. But now it was. He had left it. He had forgotten it. He had gotten realist. I stood there with the key in my hand. It was small. Brass. It said the name of the bank on one side and a number on the other. The number matched the receipt. The receipt I had found in his briefcase all those years ago. I put the key in my pocket. I left the study. I went to my room. I sat on the bed. I looked at the key. I knew I should take it to the bank. I knew I should open the box. I knew I should find out what was inside. I also knew he had been moving money. I knew he had a trust. I knew he had a lawyer. I knew he was planning to leave me. I knew the box might contain something I didn't want to see. I held the key. I turned it over in my hand. I thought about Tom. I thought about Claire. I thought about Margaret. I thought about the night in the gymnasium. I thought about the word never. I put the key on my nightstand. I left it there. I didn't go to the bank. I waited. He came home from Chicago. He brought me a small box. A bracelet. Silver. It was pretty. I put it on. I said thank you. He said, I missed you. I said, I missed you too. I was lying. He was lying. We were both lying, and I was rooting to get tired of it. But I kept going. I kept smiling. I kept cooking dinner. I kept helping with homework. I kept letting him kiss me goodnight. I kept pretending. I root taking longer walks in the evenings. I walked through the neighborhood. I walked past houses I'd known for years. I walked past the school. I walked past the park where I'd pushed Liam on the swings. I walked past the coffee shop where I used to go with Margaret before everything broke. I walked and I thought and I walked some more. I thought about my life. I thought about the choices I had made. I thought about the things I had given up. I thought about the things I had accepted. I thought about all the times I had told myself it was enough. It had never been enough. It had just been what I had. I thought about the key on my nightstand. I thought about the box at the bank. I thought about what might be inside. Something bad. Something good. Something that would change everything. Something that would change nothing. I didn't know. I went home. I made dinner. I ate with my family. I kissed Tom goodnight. I lay in the dark and I listened to him breathe. He was asleep. He was always asleep. He never woke up in the middle of the night. He never had bad dreams. He never worried about anything. He was a man who had never had to worry about anything. I got up. I walked to the nightstand. I picked up the key. I held it in my palm. It was cold. It was small. It was a piece of metal that held the answer to a question I had been asking for years. I put the key back. I went to sleep. The next morning, I made breakfast. I packed Liam's lunch. I kissed Tom goodbye. I got in my car. I drove to the bank. I walked in. I stood at the counter. I said, I need to access a safe deposit box. The teller said, do you have the key? I said, yes. She said, I'll need to see some identification. I showed her my license. She typed something into her computer. She frowned. She said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore, but this box is registered solely to your husband. I can't give you access without his signature. I said, I have the key. She said, the key is not enough. The account is in his name only. I nodded. I said, thank you. I left the bank. I sat in the car. I held the key in my hand. I looked at it. I thought about all the things I had learned. All the accounts. All the transfers. All the secret plans. All of it was his. All of it was hidden. All of it was designed to leave me with nothing. I drove home. I sat in the driveway. I looked at the house. I looked at the windows. I looked at the garden I had planted. I looked at the life I had built. I thought about the box. I thought about the key. I thought about Tom. I thought about the lawyer. I thought about the trust. I thought about the money he had moved. I thought about all of it, and I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was something simpler. Something colder. It was the moment I stopped hoping. It was the moment I stopped believing he would choose me. He had already chosen. He had chosen years ago. He had chosen Claire. He had chosen his money. He had chosen himself. I went inside. I went to my closet. I opened the file. I added the latest notes. Attempted to access box. Denied. Account in his name only. Safe deposit box remains sealed. I looked at the file. I looked at the box of my things. I looked at the life I had made and the life I was about to leave. I thought about what I had said to Tom years ago, when he had asked me why I was always reading. I had said, there's a lot I need to learn. I had learned it. I had learned everything. I knew what he had. I knew what he planned. I knew what he thought he was going to do to me. I closed the file. I put it back. I went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. I took out the chicken. I sta root making dinner. He never asked what I did during the day. That was the part that made me feel colder than anything else. But I was done being cold. I was done waiting. I was done being the woman who waited for her husband to come home. I made dinner. I served dinner. I ate dinner. I cleared the plates. I washed the dishes. I went to bed. I lay next to Tom. I listened to him breathe. I sta read at the ceiling. And I thought, enough is enough. She cried like a child in front of the Widener Library, and I did not feel a thing. Liam got into HA River Road. He got into 3 other schools too. Brown, Columbia, and a safety school he never mentioned again after the HA River Road letter came. I remember the day. I was at the kitchen table, working on a report for Rachel, when I heard the mail slot open. I didn't get up right away. I had been getting up at 5 for years now, and my body had learned to move slowly on Saturday mornings. The envelope was thick. It said HA River Road University on the return address. I took it to Liam's room. He was still asleep. 17 years old. All limbs and long hair, and the same small scar on his forehead from when he fell off his bike at 8. I sat on the edge of his bed and I said, "You need to open this." He opened one eye. "What is it? I think you know." He sat up. He tore the envelope open. He read the letter. He read it again. He looked at me. He said, "I got in." I said, "I know." He said, "Mom, I got into HA River Road." I said, "I know." I never doubted it. He hugged me. He was taller than me by a foot. He smelled like sleep and deodorant. I held him and I thought about Margaret. I thought about the conference. I thought about what she had said in front of the teacher. Never. She had said never. I held my son and I did not say it out loud. I did not need to. Tom found out at dinner. I didn't tell him. Liam told him. He said, "Dad, I got into HA River Road." Tom looked up from his steak. He said, "HA River RD." Liam said, "Yes." Tom said, "That's great. That's really great. How did you swing that?" Liam laughed. He said, "I worked hard. Mom helped me." Tom looked at me. He said, "You helped him." I said, "I read with him. For years. Every night. I read with him." Tom nodded. He said, "Well, that's great. We'll need to figure out tuition. That's not cheap." I said, "We have the money. You've been saving it for years. I've seen the accounts." He looked at me. Just for a second. A flicker. Then it was gone. He said, "Right? The accounts." "Of course." I smiled. I cut my chicken. I ate my dinner. I did not say anything else. Liam left for Cambridge in August. Tom and I drove him to the airport. He hugged us both. He hugged Tom for 2 seconds. He hugged me for a long time. He said, "I'll call every week." I said, "You don't have to call every week." "But I'd like it." He said, "I love you, Mom." I said, "I love you too. I'm so proud of you. You have no idea." He walked through security. He turned back once. He waved. I waved back. I stood there until I couldn't see him anymore. Tom put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Let's go home." I let him drive. I sat in the passenger seat and I watched the highway go by. I thought about Liam. I thought about the first time I had held him. I thought about the first time he had read to me. I thought about the late nights and the TRS and the Libra re-trips and the tutors and the books he had bought with his own money from his first job at the bookstore. I thought about all of it. I did not think about margaret. I did not think about the conference. I didn't have to. That had already been settled. It had been settled the moment he walked through the door of the middle school gymnasium and told Tom to leave. Or maybe it had been settled the moment I sta root reading with him. The moment I stopped listening to anyone else. We drove home. I went inside. I walked into the empty house. It felt bigger without Liam. It felt quieter. It felt like a place I had been living in but had never really belonged to. I walked through the rooms. I touched the furniture. I looked at the photographs on the walls. All of them had Liam in them. All of them had me. None of them had Tom in a way that felt real. I sat on the couch. Tom came in. He sat across from me. He said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine. I just miss him." He said, "He'll be home for Christmas." I said, "I know." He said, "We should do something. Just us. A trip. Maybe Europe. You always wanted to go to Italy." I said, "That sounds nice." He smiled. He said, "I'm going to take care of you. You've been a good wife. You've been a good mother. You deserve a break." I looked at him. I saw his face. I saw the lines around his eyes. I saw the gray in his hair. I saw the man I had married. I saw the man I had loved. I saw the man who had hidden money for me for years. I saw the man who had let his sister-in-law humiliate his son. I saw the man who had been having an affair with his colleague for nearly a decade. I saw all of it. He thought I saw none of it. I said, "That's kind of you to say." He said, "I mean it." I said, "I know you do." I did not say anything else. I got up. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. I stood at the window and I looked out at the backyard road. The garden was overgrown. I had let it go. I didn't see about the garden anymore. I didn't see about a lot of things anymore. 3 weeks later, I got a call from my mother. She said, "Margaret is coming to town. She wants to see you. She wants to see Liam." I said, "Liam is at River Road." She said, "She knows. She wants to see you. She wants to apologize." I said, "For what?" She said, "For everything. She's been going to therapy. She's different now." I said, "I don't believe you." She said, "Elena. She's your sister." I said, "I know what she said about my son." My mother was quiet. Then she said, "I know. I was there. I heard her." I didn't say anything then. "I'm sorry." I said, "It's not your fault." She said, "I should have stopped her. I should have said something." I said, "It doesn't matter now. He got into River Road. He's there. He's fine." She was wrong. She said, "Let her see you. Let her say she's sorry. If she is, let her prove it." I said, "I'll think about it." I thought about it for a week. Then I called Margaret. She answered on the first ring. She said, "Elena." I said, "It's me." She said, "I didn't think you would call." I said, "I'm not sure I wanted to. But my mother asked. So I'm calling." She said, "Can we meet? I'll come to you. Anywhere you want." I said, "Liam is coming home for Thanksgiving. You can come to the house. But you don't see him unless he wants to see you." She said, "I understand." She came on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I opened the door. She looked different. Thinner. Older. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes were tired. She looked at me and she said, "You look good." I said, "I have a good life." She said, "I know. I've heard about Liam. Everyone has heard about Liam. River Road. It's incredible." I said, "It is." She said, "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in. She stood in the living room. She looked at the photographs. She saw Liam's graduation picture from high school. She saw him in his cap and gown. She touched the frame. She said, "He looks so grown up." I said, he is grown up. He's a man now. He's at H.A. River Road. He's the valedictorian of his class. He's been named to the dean's list 3 times. He's doing a thesis on something I don't understand. He's brilliant. She said, I know. I know. I said, you said he'd never go to college. You said it in front of his teacher. In front of my husband. In front of Claire. You said never. She turned to face me. She was crying. She said, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I was wrong. I was cruel. I was jealous. I was bitter. I was all of it. I was a terrible sister. I said, yes, you were. She said, I've been in therapy. I've been on medication. I've been working on myself. I know it's not an excuse. I know it doesn't make up for it. But I want you to know that I know what I did. I know how bad it was. I said, you hurt my son. You hurt me. You hurt my marriage. You hurt everything. She said, I know. I said, you knew about Tom and Claire. You knew. You were friends with her. You were closer to her than you were to me. You knew they were having an affair. You knew, and you didn't tell me. She was quiet. Then she said, how did you know? I said, I've known for years. I've known for longer than you think. I've known since the conference. I've known since Claire told Tom he had a thing. I've known since I found the receipt. I've known since I found the safe deposit box. I've known. I've been waiting. She said, you've been waiting for what I said, for him to leave. For him to try. For him to show me who he really is. And he has. He's shown me everything. He's shown me all of it. She said, Elena, I don't know what to say. I said, don't say anything. Just listen. Liam is fine. I'm fine. I'm better than fine. I'm not the woman you knew at that conference. I'm not the woman who just stood there and took it. I'm not that woman anymore. She said, I can see that. I said, you can go now. You can tell Claire I know. You can tell Tom I know. You can tell everyone. I don't see a re. I have everything I need. I have my son. I have my CA rear. I have my money. I have my life. I don't need any of you. She said, I'm sorry. I said, I know you are, but it's too late. It's been too late for a long time. She left. I closed the door. I stood in the hallway. I did not feel a thing. I thought I would feel something. Relief. Sadness. Anger. Vindication. I felt nothing. Just a quiet, empty stillness. Like a room after everyone has left. Like the end of a long day. Like the moment before sleep. I went to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of wine. I sat at the table. I thought about Margaret. I thought about the conference. I thought about the fluorescent lights and the paper cup of coffee and the sound of her pen scratching across her notebook. I thought about never. I drank the wine. I finished it. I poured another glass. I drank that one too. I got up. I went to bed. I slept. I woke up. I made coffee. I went to work. I lived my life. Liam came home for Christmas. He brought a friend. A girl named Rachel. She was smart and kind, and she made him laugh. I watched them together. I watched him hold her hand. I watched him look at her like she was the only person in the world. I thought about Tom. I thought about the way he had looked at me once. A long time ago. A different life. I didn't say anything. I made dinner. I served dinner. I watched them eat. I listened to them talk. I felt a kind of peace. A peace I had not felt in years. A peace I had Ned. After dinner, I went to the study. I opened the desk. I found the safe deposit box key. I had kept it. I had kept it all these years. I had never used it. I had never gone back to the bank. I had never opened the box. I held it in my hand. I looked at it. I thought about all the things I had done without opening it. All the things I had Ned. All the money I had saved. All the plans I had made. All the years I had waited. I put the key back. I closed the drawer. I walked back to the kitchen. Liam was doing the dishes. Rachel was drying them. They were talking about something. I didn't listen. I just watched them. I watched my son. I watched his hands move through the soapy water. I thought about the first time he had washed a dish. He had been 6. He had dropped it. I had not yelled at him. I had just picked up the pieces and said, "Try again." He had tried again. He had kept trying. He had never stopped trying. That was the difference. He had never stopped. And neither had I. I made sure he knew I was happy. Happy wives don't file for divorce. Happy wives don't keep secrets. The spring after Liam's freshman year, Tom asked me to renew our vows. He said it over breakfast on a Sunday morning. I was reading the newspaper. He was eating eggs. He said, "I've been thinking. We should do something. A renewal. Like a second wedding. It would be good for us." I put the newspaper down. I looked at him. I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I love you. Because we've been together for 25 years. Because we have a son who's at HA Road. Because we have a good life. I want to celebrate it." I said, "That's a nice thought." He said, "So you'll do it?" I said, "I'll think about it." He smiled. He kissed me. He went to the office. I sat at the kitchen table. I thought about the renewal. I thought about what it would mean. I thought about standing in front of our friends and our family and saying the same words I had said 25 years ago. I thought about looking at him and promising to love him for the rest of my life. I thought about knowing, while I said it, that he had been lying to me for years. I thought about knowing, while I said it, that I had been lying too. I got up. I went to my closet. I opened the file. I looked at the papers. I looked at the accounts. I looked at the photographs. I looked at the notes. I had enough. I had more than enough. I had a case that would bury him. I had a case that would leave me with more than I needed. I had everything. I closed the file. I went back to the kitchen. I called Diana. I said, "He asked me to renew our vows." She said, "He's trying to keep you close." I said, "I know." She said, "He's stalling. He's trying to make you think everything is fine. He's trying to make you feel secure so you don't ask questions." I said, "I know." She said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to wait. I want to let him think everything is fine. I want to let him think he's winning. And then I want to serve him." She said, "That's a good plan." I said, "I've been planning for a long time." She said, "I know. You're ready. You've been ready. When do you want to move?" I said, "After Liam graduates. I don't want to do anything that could affect him. I don't want to distract him. He's worked too hard. He's come too far. I won't let this be a part of his story." She said, "That's generous." I said, "It's not generosity. It's common sense. He deserves to have his moment. He deserves to have a mother who isn't in the middle of a war." She said, "You have a plan." I said, "I always have a plan." I hung up. I went back to the kitchen. I made a fresh pot of coffee. I sat at the table. I waited. Tom came home that night. He asked me again about the renewal. I said, "Let's do it. Let's do it next summer. After Liam graduates. It'll be a celebration. A new beginning." He kissed me. He said, "I knew you'd say yes. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." I said, "I know." He laughed. He didn't hear what I meant. He never heard what I meant. He heard what he wanted to hear. Liam came home that summer. He was different. More confident. More sure of himself. He had his own opinions. He had his own voice. He had his own life. He sat at the dinner table and he talked about his classes. He talked about his friends. He talked about his thesis. He talked about his girlfriend. He talked about everything. Tom listened. He nodded. He asked questions. He smiled. He was a good father in the way that mattered. He showed up. He paid attention. He read. He wasn't a monster. He was just a man who had made choices. Bad choices. Selfish choices. Choices that had hurt me. Choices that had hurt his son. Choices he had never had to answer for. I looked at him and I thought about the night he had left the conference. I thought about the receipt I had found. I thought about the safe deposit box. I thought about Claire. I thought about all of it. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt tired. Tired of waiting. Tired of pretending. Tired of being the woman who made everything easy for everyone else. Liam left for his junior year. Tom and I went back to our routine. He went to work. I went to work. He came home. I made dinner. We watched television. We went to bed. We said goodnight. We said we loved each other. We were good at saying things that didn't mean anything. ISTA route making arrangements. Quietly. CA refully. I met with Diana once a month. I reviewed the file. I reviewed the accounts. I reviewed the plan. I paid her. I went home. I made dinner. I watched television. I said goodnight. I said I loved him. He never suspected. He never had any reason to. I was always happy. I was always cheerful. I was always the wife who smiled and made dinner and asked about his day. I was exactly who he needed me to be. I was exactly who he expected me to be. That was the RT that made it work. He had never really seen me. He had seen the version of me he wanted. He had seen the wife who would never leave. The wife who would never ask questions. The wife who would never push back. He had seen that woman for so long that he didn't know how to see anything else. I was going to show him. I was going to show him everything. Liam called on a Tuesday night. He was excited. He said, "Mom, I got nominated for valedictorian. It's not official yet, but they told me I'm in the running." I said, "That's incredible." He said, "I don't know if I'll get it, but I'm close. I'm really close." I said, "You'll get it. You've worked for it. You deserve it." He said, "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." I said, "You did it yourself. I just read with you. You did all the rest." He said, "Mom, you know what I mean." I said, "I know. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you." I hung up. I sat in the kitchen. I thought about the conference. I thought about MARGA red. I thought about the word never. I thought about the fluorescent lights. I thought about the paper cup of coffee. I thought about my son, who had been told he was never going to make it. I thought about my son, who was about to be named valedictorian at HA Road ISTA route to cry. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet release. The kind of crying that happens when you've been holding something for so long that you don't even realize you're holding it until it's gone. I cried at the kitchen table. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. I wiped my face. I took a breath. I went to bed. The next morning, I called Diana. I said, "He's going to be valedictorian. Liam. He's going to be valedictorian." She said, "That's wonderful." I said, "I want to do it before the graduation. I want to serve Tom before Liam walks across that stage. I don't want him to be RT of that day. I want that day to be for Liam. For me. For all of it." She said, "That's soon." "Are you ready?" I said, "I've been ready for 10 years." She said, "Then let's do it." We set a date. 3 weeks before the graduation. I had the papers ready. I had the evidence ready. I had everything ready. All I had to do was wait. I watched Tom over the next few weeks. I watched him come home. I watched him eat dinner. I watched him watch television. I watched him sleep. I watched him, and I thought about all the things he didn't know. All the things I had been keeping from him. All the things I had learned. All the things I had done. I thought about the safe deposit box. I still hadn't opened it. I didn't need to. I had enough. I had more than enough. I had built my case without whatever was in that box. I had built my life without whatever was in that box. I didn't need it. I didn't need anything from him. I made dinner. I served dinner. I sat across from him. He said, "You seem quiet tonight." I said, "I'm just thinking." He said, "About what?" I said, "About the future. About what comes next. About Liam's graduation. About everything." He said, "You're going to cry at the graduation, aren't you?" I said, "Probably." He laughed. He said, "You always cry. You cried when he learned to walk. You cried when he STA route school. You cried when he got his driver's license. You're going to cry at the graduation." I said, "Yes. I'm going to cry." He said, "I'll be there. I'll hold your hand." I said, "I know you will." I didn't say anything else. I ate my dinner. I cleared the plates. I washed the dishes. I went to bed. I lay next to him. I listened to him breathe. I STA read at the ceiling. I thought about the date. 3 weeks. 21 days. I had waited 10 years. I could wait 21 more days. I STA route preparing. Not for the divorce. I had already read for that. I was preparing for the day after. I was preparing for what came next. I had already signed a lease on an APA agreement. I had already STA route moving things into storage. I had already talked to a realtor about selling the house. I had already done everything I needed to do. I was ready to leave. I was ready to walk out. I just had to serve the papers first. I woke up early the next morning. I went to the kitchen. I made coffee. I sat at the table. I opened my laptop. I looked at the file. I looked at the documents. I looked at the photographs. I looked at the notes. I looked at all of it and I thought about the woman I had been. The woman who had stood in that gymnasium with a paper cup of bad coffee. The woman who had let her sister say never. The woman who had let her husband walk out the door. I was not that woman anymore. I closed the laptop. I finished my coffee. I showered. I dressed. I made breakfast. Tom came down. He kissed me. He said, "You look beautiful today." I said, "Thank you." He said, "What are you doing today?" I said, "I have some errands. I need to go downtown." He said, "I can drive you. I have a meeting NEAR there." I said, "No. I'll take my own car. It's fine." He said, "Okay. I'll see you tonight." He left. I read the table. I washed the dishes. I went to the closet. I opened the file. I took out the divorce papers. I read them one more time. I had read them 100 times. I had read them at night. I had read them in the morning. I had read them on the phone with Diana. I knew every word. I knew every clause. I knew every detail. I put the papers in my bag. I went to the CAR. I drove to Diana's office. I met her there. She looked at me. She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I've never been more sure." She said, "You know he's going to fight this." I said, "He can try. I have the evidence. I have the accounts. I have the transfers. I have everything. He can fight. He's going to lose." She said, "You're ready." I said, "I've been ready for 10 years." She said, "Then let's serve him." I said, "Not yet. I want to do it at home. I want to do it alone. I want to look him in the eye when I give him the papers." She said, "That's going to be difficult." I said, "It's supposed to be difficult. He deserves difficulty." She nodded. She gave me the papers. She gave me a copy of the evidence. She gave me a list of the accounts. She gave me everything I needed. I put it in my bag. I left her office. I drove home. I walked into the house. It was quiet. Tom was at work. He wouldn't be home for hours. I sat in the living room. I put the papers on the coffee table. I read at them. I thought about what was going to happen. I thought about what I was going to say. I thought about how he was going to react. I had played it out 1,000 times in my head. I had rehearsed the words. I had practiced the delivery. I had done everything I could do to prepare. I was still nervous. I was still red. I was still a woman who was about to end her marriage, but I was also a woman who had survived 10 years of secrets and lies. I was also a woman who had built a new life from nothing. I was also a woman who had won. I took a breath. I got up. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. I sat at the table. I waited. Tom came home at 6. He walked through the door. He said, "I'm home." I said, "I'm in the kitchen." He walked in. He kissed my forehead. He said, "How was your day?" I said, "It was good. I did some errands. I met with someone." He said, "Who?" I said, "Diana." He said, "Who's Diana?" I said, "My attorney." He looked at me. He said, "Your attorney? What do you need an attorney for?" I said, "We need to talk." He said, "What about?" I said, "Sit down." He didn't sit. He just stood there. He looked at me. He said, "Elena, what's going on?" I opened my bag. I took out the papers. I held them out to him. I said, "I'm filing for divorce." I said it and I watched his face change. I watched it go from confusion to disbelief to anger. I watched him process what I had just said. I watched him try to understand what was happening. I watched him fail. He said, "What are you talking about? You're filing for divorce." Why, I thought we were happy. I thought we were going to renew our vows. I said, "You thought a lot of things that weren't true." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I know about Claire. I know about the safe deposit box. I know about the accounts. I know about the trust. I know about everything. He said, what I said, I've known for years. I've known since the conference. I've known since Claire told you to leave. I've known since I found the receipt. I've known since I found the key. I've known everything. He said, you've known for years. I said, yes. He said, and you didn't say anything. I said, I was waiting. He said, for what? I said, for you to show me who you really are. And you did. You showed me every day. He was quiet. He looked at the papers. He looked at me. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to leave. I'm going to take half of everything. I'm going to take the money you hid. I'm going to take the trust. I'm going to take it all. And I'm going to walk out that door. He said, you can't do that. I said, I already have. I have my own attorney. I have my own file. I have my own accounts. I have my own life. I don't need you anymore. He said, Elena, please, let's talk about this. I said, we're talking about it. We're talking about it right now. And I'm telling you that it's over. He looked at me. He looked at the papers. He looked at me again. He said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt Liam. I was selfish. I was stupid. I know I was. I said, I know you were. He said, can you forgive me? I said, I don't need to forgive you. I just need to leave. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to a place where I don't have to pretend anymore. I stood up. I picked up my bag. I walked to the door. He said, Elena, please, don't do this. Let's work it out. Let's try. I'll do anything. I turned around. I looked at him. I said, you don't have to do anything. I'm already done. I opened the door. I walked out. I didn't look back. I got in the car. I drove to the apartment. I walked in. I sat on the couch. I looked around at the empty room. It didn't have furniture. It didn't have photographs. It didn't have anything except me and my bag and the quiet. I sat there. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything except a deep, exhausted peace. It was over. It was finally over. I looked at my phone. There were 3 missed calls from Tom. I didn't answer. I turned the phone off. I sat in the dark. I thought about the conference. I thought about Margaret. I thought about Claire. I thought about Tom. I thought about all of them. I thought about never. I thought about Liam. I thought about his face when he walked across that stage. I thought about his smile. I thought about his voice. I thought about all the years we had spent together. All the late nights. All the EAROI mornings. All the library trips. All the reading. All of it. I thought about the word never. And I thought about how wrong it had been. I lay down on the couch. I pulled a blanket over myself. I closed my eyes. I didn't think about Tom. I didn't think about Margaret. I didn't think about Claire. I thought about my son. I thought about the man he had become. I thought about the woman I had become. I thought about the life I was going to build. I fell asleep. I slept like I hadn't slept in years. I slept through the night. I woke up the next morning and I walked to the window. I looked out at the city. I looked at the sky. I looked at the buildings. I looked at the people walking on the street. I looked at everything and I thought, I did it. I finally did it. I called Diana. I said, I served him. I'm out. I'm at the apartment. She said, good. Now we start the real work. I said, I'm ready. She said, I'll file the motion tomorrow. We'll start the discovery process. We'll get everything you're owed. I said, thank you. She said, you did the hard part. I said, I know. I did. I hung up. I sat on the couch. I looked around at the empty room. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was mine. I thought about the conference. I thought about the fluorescent lights. I thought about the paper cup of coffee. I thought about the word never. I smiled. I got up. I route making plans. He was still sitting there when I closed the front door. The next 10 weeks were paperwork and phone calls and meetings with Diana. Tom fought everything. He fought the discovery. He fought the accounts. He fought the trust. He fought the safe deposit box. He fought all of it. He hired a lawyer. He hired a whole team. He hired people who were paid to make my life difficult. They made it difficult. But they didn't win. Diana was good. She was better than his lawyers. She had the file. She had the evidence. She had the timeline. She had everything Tom had been hiding for years, and she used it. She used it like a surgeon. She cut through his defenses one by one. She dismantled his arguments. She exposed his secrets. I sat in her office one afternoon. She spread the documents across the table. She said, "He's hiding more. We found another account. Offshore. He thought we wouldn't find it." I said, "How much?" She said, "Enough to buy a house. A nice house. Maybe two." I said, "What else?" She said, "He's been transferring money to Claire. Small amounts. Monthly. For years. It adds up." He was supporting her. He was funding her life. I said, "I know. I found the receipts." She said, "You have a strong case. He's going to have to settle. He doesn't want this in court. He doesn't want it in the papers. He's a public figure. A partner at a major firm. This would destroy him." I said, "I don't see a re about destroying him. I just want what's mine." She said, "You'll get more than what's yours. You'll get a lot more." I nodded. I signed the documents. I left her office. I drove to the apartment. I sat on the couch. I thought about Tom. I thought about Claire. I thought about the offshore account. I thought about the monthly transfers. I thought about all of it. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of dealing with it. Tired of him. I turned on the television. I watched a king show. I watched a woman make a cake. I watched her frost it. I watched her decorate it. It was beautiful. I thought about the last time I had made a cake. It had been for Liam's birthday. He had been 14. I had made a chocolate cake. I had spent hours on it. Tom had eaten one slice and said, "It's good." He had not helped with the dishes. He had not helped with anything. I turned off the television. I went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. I looked at the empty shelves. I had not bought groceries. I had not had time. I had been too busy with the divorce. I had been too busy with everything. I grabbed my keys. I walked to the store. I bought food. I came home. I made dinner. I ate it alone. I watched the news. I went to bed. I did the same thing the next day. And the next day. And the next. I developed a routine. I went to work. I met with Diana. I came home. I made dinner. I slept. I did it again. I did it until the days blended together. I did it until I forgot what it felt like to be married. I did it until I forgot what it felt like to be anyone else. Liam called on a Friday. He said, "Mom, I got it. I got valedictorian." I said, "I knew you would." He said, "I can't believe it." I said, "I can. You worked for it. You rented it." He said, "Mom." Dad called me. He said, "You filed for divorce." I said, "I did." He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "I wanted to wait. I wanted you to focus on graduation. I didn't want to distract you." He said, "Mom, you should have told me. You should have told me everything." I said, "I'm telling you now. I filed for divorce. I moved out. I'm in an apartment downtown. I'm okay. I'm better than okay. I'm fine." He said, "What happened?" I said, "A lot of things. A lot of things I didn't know. A lot of things I found out. I'll tell you everything. When you come home, I'll tell you all of it." He said, "Is there someone else?" I said, "Yes. There's someone else. Her name is Claire. She's been around for a long time." He was quiet. Then he said, "Did you know?" I said, "I knew for a long time. I waited. I waited until I was ready." He said, "Mom, I'm sorry." I said, "Don't be sorry. You don't have anything to be sorry for. You didn't do anything. This is between your father and me. This has nothing to do with you." He said, "It feels like it has something to do with me." I said, "It doesn't. You are not part of this. You are not the reason for this. This is about us. This is about choices we made. This is about our marriage. It has nothing to do with you." He said, "I love you, Mom." I said, "I love you too. I'll see you at graduation. I'll be there. I'll be in the front row." He said, "You'll cry." I said, yes. I'll cry. I'll cry a lot. He laughed. He said, I love you, Mom. I said, I love you too. I'm so proud of you. I'm the proudest mother in the world. I hung up. I sat on the couch. I looked at the wall. I thought about Liam. I thought about the man he had become. I thought about the boy he had been. I thought about all the years I had spent reading with him. All the years I had spent believing in him. All the years I had spent watching him grow. He had done it. He had done everything I had ever dreamed for him. He had become the person I had always known he could be. I thought about Marga Red. I thought about the conference. I thought about the fluorescent lights. I thought about the paper cup of coffee. I thought about the word never. I thought about all of it and I didn't feel angry. I just felt grateful. Grateful that I had never believed her. Grateful that I had never stopped believing in him. Grateful that I had been right. Graduation week came. I flew to Boston. I checked into a hotel. I called Liam. He said, Mom, I'm so excited to see you. I said, I'm excited to see you too. He said, is Dad coming? I said, I don't know. I haven't spoken to him. I don't know what he's planning. He said he would come. He said he wanted to see me walk. I said, then he should come. This is your day. Your day should be about you. He said, Mom, are you going to be okay? I said, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be better than fine. I'm going to watch my son walk across that stage, and I'm going to be the happiest person in the world. He said, I love you, Mom. I said, I love you too. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up. I went to bed. I slept. I woke up. I showered. I dressed. I put on a new dress. It was blue. I had bought it for the occasion. I looked in the mirror. I looked at myself. I looked at the woman who had survived. I looked at the woman who had won. I looked at the woman who had been told never. I looked at her and I smiled. I walked to the venue. I found my seat. I sat in the front row. I looked around. I saw the other parents. I saw the other families. I saw the excitement. I saw the pride. I saw everything. I waited. The ceremony sta route. The speeches. The music. The processional. I watched the graduates walk in. I looked for Liam. I found him. He was near the front. He was wearing the cap and gown. He was wearing the smile. He was looking around. He was looking for me. I waved. He saw me. He smiled. He smiled like he was 10 years old again. He smiled like the day he had learned to read. I cried. I didn't try to stop. I just let it happen. The ceremony continued. The speeches. The awards. The names. They called his name. Liam Whitmore. Valedictorian. He walked to the podium. He gave his speech. He talked about his journey. He talked about his struggles. He talked about his mother. He talked about the nights she had spent reading with him. He talked about the times she had stayed up late to help him. He talked about the faith she had in him. He talked about all of it. He talked about me. I cried harder. I didn't see a re. I just let it happen. He finished. He stepped down. He walked back to his seat. He looked at me. He smiled. I smiled back. I mouthed the words. I love you. He mouthed them back. I love you too. The ceremony ended. The graduates threw their caps. They cheered. They hugged. They celebrated. I stood up. I walked toward him. He saw me coming. He ran toward me. He hugged me. He lifted me off the ground. He said, I did it, Mom. I did it. I said, I know. I know you did. I never doubted it. He said, I love you. I love you so much. I said, I love you too. I am so proud of you. I am the proudest mother in the world. He put me down. He said, did you see Dad? I said, no. I didn't see him. He said he would come. He said he would be here. I said, maybe he changed his mind. He said, maybe. He looked around. He looked for his father. He didn't find him. He turned back to me. He said, it doesn't matter. You're here. You're the one who matters. I said, I'm here. I'll always be here. We walked to the reception. We ate. We talked. We laughed. We posed for photographs. We celebrated. We did everything you're supposed to do at a graduation. It was perfect. It was exactly what it was supposed to be. I saw Tom at the edge of the crowd. He had come. He was standing alone. He was watching us. He was watching Liam. He was watching me. He didn't approach. He didn't wave. He just stood there. He was wearing a suit. He was holding a bouquet of flowers. He looked lost. He looked like a man who had missed everything. Liam saw him. He looked at me. He said, "Dad's here." I said, "I know." He said, "Should I go talk to him?" I said, "That's up to you. He's your father. If you want to talk to him, you should talk to him. This is your day. You decide." He looked at Tom. He looked at me. He said, "I want to talk to him. But I want to talk to you first." I said, "Talk to him. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere." He walked over to Tom. I watched them. I watched Tom hand him the flowers. I watched Liam take them. I watched them talk. I couldn't hear what they said. I didn't need to. I knew what they were saying. I knew what it was like to have a conversation that felt like the end of something. Liam came back. He said, "He wants to talk to you." I said, "I don't want to talk to him." He said, "Mom, please, just for a minute. Just so he can say what he needs to say. Then you can leave. You never have to see him again." I said, "I don't want to." He said, "I know. I know you don't. But please. For me. Just for a minute." I looked at him. I looked at his face. I looked at the face of the man I had raised. The man I had read to. The man I had believed in. The man who was asking me for something. I said, "Okay. 1 minute." I walked over to Tom. He was still holding the empty flowers. He looked at me. He said, "Elena." I said, "Tom." He said, "I just wanted to say I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I'm sorry for the way I treated Liam. I'm sorry for all of it." I said, "I don't need your apologies." He said, "I know you don't. But I need to say them. I need you to hear them." I said, "I've heard them. I've heard them for years. You've been saying them for years. You've been saying them and doing nothing. You've been saying them and hiding money. You've been saying them and sleeping with Claire. You've been saying them and planning to leave me with nothing. You've been saying them and meaning nothing." He said, "You're right. You're right about everything. I was selfish. I was cruel. I was a terrible husband. I was a terrible father. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve Liam. I don't deserve anything." I said, "You don't." He said, "I know." I said, "You had everything. You had a wife who loved you. You had a son who needed you. You had a life that was good. You threw it all away. You threw it away for her. You threw it away for money. You threw it away for things that don't matter." He said, "I know." I said, Do you really know?" He said, "Yes. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it." I said, "I spent 10 years believing if I was good enough you'd stay. I thought if I was patient enough, if I was kind enough, if I was the perfect wife, you'd come back. I thought you'd choose me. I thought you'd choose us. But you were already gone. You were already gone the day you walked out of that conference. You were already gone before I even knew there was a reason to be gone." He said, "I didn't know what I was doing. I was confused. I was lost. I made mistakes." I said, "You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Every day. You made the choice to lie to me. You made the choice to hide money from me. You made the choice to sleep with someone else. You made the choice to let Margaret humiliate our son. You made every single choice. No one made you do anything. You chose all of it." He said, "You're right. I chose it. I chose all of it. And I regret it. I regret everything." I said, "You didn't regret it when you were hiding the money. You didn't regret it when you were taking her to dinner. You didn't regret it when you were planning to leave me with nothing. You didn't regret any of it until you got caught." He said, "That's not true. I regretted it the whole time. I just didn't know how to stop." I said, "You could have stopped. You could have stopped any time. You could have come home and told me the truth. You could have said, 'Elena, I'm having an affair. Elena, I'm hiding money. Elena, I'm planning to leave you.' But you didn't. You didn't say any of it. You just kept going. You just kept lying." He said, "I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to face you. I said, you didn't know how to face me because you knew what you were doing was wrong. You knew it the whole time. You just didn't see Ari enough to stop. He was quiet. He looked at the ground. He looked at the flowers. He looked at everything except me. I said, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not sad anymore. I'm not anything anymore. I'm done. I'm done being the wife who waits. I'm done being the woman who hopes. I'm done being the person who thinks if she just tries hard enough, everything will be okay. I'm done with all of it. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to work. I'm going to travel. I'm going to see my son. I'm going to do all the things I didn't do because I was waiting for you. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be free. I'm going to be everything I was supposed to be. He said, I never wanted to hurt you. I said, I know. But you did. You hurt me more than you'll ever know. And I've decided that I'm not going to let that hurt define me anymore. I'm not going to be the woman who got left behind. I'm going to be the woman who walked away. I turned around. I walked back to Liam. I said, I'm done. I said what I needed to say. He said, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. I'm better than fine. I'm done. He hugged me. He said, I love you, Mom. I said, I love you too. I love you more than you'll ever know. We walked away. We walked out of the venue. We walked into the sunlight. We walked through the streets of Cambridge. We found a restaurant. We sat down. We ordered food. We talked. We laughed. We celebrated. We did everything we were supposed to do. We did it without him. We did it together. I looked at my son. I looked at the man he had become. I thought about the conference. I thought about Margaret. I thought about Tom. I thought about Claire. I thought about all of them. I didn't feel anything. I felt the sunlight on my face. I felt the warm air. I felt the joy. I felt the freedom. I was done. I was finally done. I flew home the day after the graduation. Liam stayed in Cambridge for another week. He had things to wrap up. He had friends to see. He had a life to live. I told him I would see him in the summer. He said he would come visit. He said he wanted to see the apartment. He said he wanted to see where I was living. He said he wanted to see my new life. I went back to the apartment. It was still empty. I had not bought furniture. I had not hung pictures. I had not done any of the things you do when you move into a new place. I had been too busy. I had been too focused. I had been too afraid to make it permanent. But now the divorce was done. Now the graduation was over. Now everything was finished. Now I had to figure out what came next. I sat on the couch. I looked around at the empty room. I thought about the house I had left. I thought about the furniture I had left behind. I thought about the photographs on the walls. I thought about the garden I had planted. I thought about all of it. I didn't miss it. I didn't miss any of it. I missed the person I had been. I missed the woman who had believed in things. But she was gone. She had been gone for a long time. She had been replaced by someone else. Someone stronger. Someone harder. Someone who had survived. I got up. I walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. I looked out the window. I looked at the city. I looked at the buildings. I looked at the people walking on the streets. I thought about what I was going to do. I thought about the future. I thought about all the things I had put off. All the things I had deferred. All the things I had said I would do someday. Someday was now. I called Rachel. I said, I want to come back full time. I want to work. I want to do something. I want to build something. She said, I was wondering when you were going to ask. I said, I was waiting. I was waiting until it was over. She said, is it over? I said, yes. It's over. She said, then let's get to work. I went back to work. I went back to the consulting firm. I went back to the spreadsheets and the data sets and the consumer behavior reports. I went back to the meetings and the presentations and the deadlines. I went back to everything I had left behind. I did it and I did it well. I did it better than I had ever done it before. I did it because I had nothing else to do. I did it because I had to rebuild. I did it because I had to prove to myself that I still could. Tom called. He called a lot. He left messages. He sent emails. He said he wanted to talk. He said he wanted to make things right. He said he wanted to see me. He said he wanted to try again. I didn't answer. I didn't call back. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already said everything I needed to say. I had already said it at the graduation. I had already said it in the kitchen. I had already said it 1,000 times in my head. I didn't need to say it again. He stopped calling. He stopped emailing. He stopped trying. He finally understood. He finally understood that I was done. He finally understood that there was nothing left to save. He finally understood that the mariage was over. It had been over for a long time. He just hadn't seen it. He just hadn't wanted to see it. Liam came home in July. He walked into the apartment. He looked around. He said, "It's empty." I said, "I know. I haven't had time to furnish it." He said, "You've been here for months." I said, "I've been busy." He said, "You've been working." I said, "Yes. I've been working. I've been rebuilding." He said, "You don't need to rebuild. You're already built." I said, "Thank you. That's kind of you to say." He said, "I mean it. You're the strongest person I know." I said, "I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn." He laughed. He said, "Same thing." He stayed for a week. We went to dinner. We went to museums. We went to the park. We did things. We talked. We laughed. We did all the things we used to do when he was a boy. It was different now. He was a man. I was a different woman. But it was good. It was better than good. It was exactly what we needed. He left at the end of the week. He hugged me at the airport. He said, "I'll see you at Thanksgiving." I said, "I'll be here." He said, "I love you, Mom." I said, "I love you too." I watched him walk through security. I watched him disappear into the crowd. I stood there for a moment. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt happy. I felt proud. I felt like I had done something right. I had raised a good man. I had raised a man who knew how to love. I had raised a man who knew how to work. I had raised a man who knew how to be kind. I had done that. I had done all of that. I drove home. I went to the apartment. I sat on the couch. I looked around at the empty room. I thought about what Liam had said. "You're already built." I thought about that. I thought about what it meant. I thought about all the hours I had spent building something else. I thought about all the hours I had spent building a mariage. I thought about all the hours I had spent building a home. I had built it all and it had fallen apart. But I had survived. I had built something new. I had built myself. I got up. I went to the computer. I opened a new tab. I looked at furniture. I looked at rugs. I looked at art. I looked at things that would make the apartment feel like mine. I sta root making a list. I sta root making plans. I sta root building something again. Not for anyone else. For me. Just for me. The next morning, I got a call from Diana. She said, "The settlement is final." He signed the papers. "You're getting everything we asked for." I said, "Everything," she said, "everything. The house. The accounts. The trust. Half the retirement. Half the investments. Everything." I said, "I don't want the house." She said, "Then sell it." I said, "I'll sell it." She said, "You're going to be fine. You're going to be more than fine." I said, "I know." She said, "You did it. You did everything you set out to do." I said, "I know." I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table. I looked out the window. I thought about the house. I thought about the garden. I thought about the rooms. I thought about all the hours I had spent there. I didn't want to go back. I didn't need to go back. I was done with that house. I was done with that life. I was done with all of it. I called a realtor. I said, "I want to sell the house. I want to sell it as soon as possible." She said, "I'll list it next week." I said, "Thank you." I hung up. I went to work. I did my job. I came home. I made dinner. I went to bed. I did it again. I did it until the house sold. I did it until the money was in my account. I did it until everything was done. The house sold in 3 weeks. I signed the papers. I transferred the money. I closed the account. I was done. I was completely done. I didn't owe him anything. I didn't owe him a single thing. I went to the bank. I walked up to the counter. I said, I need to access a safe deposit box. The teller said, do you have the key? I said, yes. She said, I'll need to see some identification. I showed her my license. She typed something into her computer. She said, the box is in your name now. The transfer went through last week. I said, I know. She said, follow me. She took me to the vault. She opened the box. She handed it to me. She left me alone in the room. I sat down. I looked at the box. It was small. It was the same box I had been carrying in my mind for 10 years. The same box I had never opened. The same box I had been afraid of. I opened it. Inside were documents, deeds, titles, account statements, photographs, a stack of old receipts, a letter. I read the letter. It was from Claire. It was dated from the year of the conference. It said things I didn't need to read. It said things I already knew. It was the proof of everything I had already figured out. I read it. I folded it. I put it back. I looked at the rest of the box. I looked at the documents. I looked at the account statements. I looked at all of it. It was everything I had already found. Everything I had already documented. Everything I had already used against him. It was all there. It had all been there the whole time. I closed the box. I walked back to the counter. I said, I'm done with this box. I want to close the account. She said, are you sure? I said, yes. She said, you'll need to sign a form. I signed the form. She took the box. She processed the closure. She handed me the receipt. I put the receipt in my purse. I walked out of the bank. I stood on the sidewalk. I looked up at the sky. It was a clear day. Blue sky. Sunlight. I felt a kind of peace. A peace I had not felt in years. A peace I had rened. I went home. I went to the closet. I opened the file. I looked at the papers. I looked at the photographs. I looked at the notes. I looked at all of it. I thought about the box. I thought about the letter. I thought about Claire. I thought about Tom. I thought about all of it. I didn't feel anything. I just felt a kind of closure. A kind of finality. A kind of peace. I closed the file. I put it away. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. I sat at the table. I looked out the window. I thought about my life. I thought about the woman I had been. I thought about the woman I was now. I thought about the woman I was going to be. I was going to be happy. I was going to be free. I was going to be everything I had always wanted to be. I was going to do all the things I had always wanted to do. I was going to live my life on my own terms. I finished my tea. I got up. I walked to the door. I opened it. I stepped outside. I walked to the park. I sat on a bench. I watched the children play. I watched the parents push swings. I watched the dogs run. I watched the world go by. I thought about Margaret. I thought about the conference. I thought about the fluorescent lights. I thought about the paper cup of coffee. I thought about the word never. I thought about my son. I thought about the man he had become. I thought about the moment he had walked across that stage. I thought about the speech he had given. I thought about the way he had looked at me. I smiled. I sat on the bench. I felt the sun on my face. I felt the warmth. I felt the joy. I felt the freedom. I was done. I was finally done. And I had done it all myself.